Welcome to Real Estate Investing Abundance, the show for busy, fulfilled professionals like you to learn how to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. Now, here is your host, Dr. Alan Lomax.
Hello, enlightened investors, and welcome back to Real Estate Investing Abundance. I'm your host, Dr. Alan, and it is, as always, a delight to have you with us today. And we are going to be looking at going from trailer trash to trailer cash. I really like that title. With us today is Alex Alexander. He is a dynamic investment specialist with a laser-focused mission, turning undervalued RV parks into profit gold mines through strategic upgrades. Known for his sharp eye in spotting hidden gems within niche markets, Alex has built a stellar reputation for consistently transforming overlooked opportunities into high-yielding investments. Leveraging cutting-edge online marketing tactics, he secures early access to the most promising deals, staying ahead of the competition and ensuring maximum returns. Alex's innovative approach and proven track record make him a formidable force in the world of RV park investments. Alex and I met a couple of weeks ago. I was on his podcast, and we had a delightful time. And I am so happy to have you back with us today, Alex, so that you can enlighten us on RV park investments as well as other things. So welcome, Alex. Tell us a little bit about Alex.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. And we did have a really great talk. I mean, I've done quite a few podcasts, and this ranks right up at the top, the one that I had with you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about Alex. One of my best friends in the world always jokes. He says, you're like Forrest Gump. You've had 80 lives, every time you turn around, you've reinvented yourself, you've changed totally into a whole different world, and that's pretty accurate. I guess I can start at the beginning, the trailer trash to trailer cash. I grew up in a small town called Midland, Texas, and if anybody's ever heard of it, they know it's about oil. And it's about the oil fields and the oil workers. There's
and
roughly...
the bushes.
Yeah, there's roughly infrastructure in the town for maybe 200,000 people, and currently there's somewhere between 500 to 700,000 people living in the area.
Wow.
Which means that most people live in some sort of RV, mobile home, something like that. So I grew up in a mobile home park, a trailer park, and at the time it was probably one of the nicer ones in the area, but it's a trailer park. And this will skip ahead to kind of later in the story, but I realized at a very young age that we were renting this piece of land that our trailer was on. We didn't own the land, and we would never own the land. And so that kind of stuck in my head as I was a little kid. I understood that. And my father had moved out. We had moved out. He was the CFO of a small chemicals company, which is part of the oil field, and it's just a very dusty, crusty little tiny town. There were maybe 100,000 people living there when I was a kid, and really the only thing that we did was church. Probably 3-4 days a week. We were there all the time, and so that just played a heavy influence on my life. And I started singing. And that was a big deal at the church, to be involved with the choirs and then singing in school. And so from singing in school, that was the only thing that was interesting to me at all. I had a terrible time in school. Like barely squeezed by in any kind of math, history, science, any of the basic subjects. Then I got into about junior high and such and realized this singing thing was really interesting to me. The sad part about it is I was terrible at it. I just had no natural skill at all, no just innate natural singing ability. and I just decided to work really hard on it. I had about 12 years of private voice lessons, and I just concentrated really hard. I was in the bottom choirs. They'd have like the OK choir, and up to the elite or the better levels. And I was always just in the basic, y'all come sing choir. And I just did that forever, and I just stuck with it. And eventually, by the time I was a senior in high school, I made it to be in the all-state choir, actually second chair, which was a really big deal. And I remember right after they announced my name, the teacher I had been with, the choir teacher I'd been with for 4 years, she looked over at me and she gave me a hug, and she said, whenever I met you, I thought this kid just cannot sing. He just cannot sing. And look at you now. And so that's kind of been a building block for all of my business ventures, is I'll just jump in with both feet. I'll just decide this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to get good at it. And that's what I did. And so kind of going forward and through the rest of the Forrest Gump story, I wanted to get out of this little tiny town in Midland, Texas. And so I jumped into the Air Force. I joined up, and immediately I started doing well. I got promoted early. I got put onto special duties. I wound up in Montana guarding nuclear missiles, and really kind of a high level secret clearance, all that kind of stuff. And I had joined the Air Force knowing that there was this band called Tops in Blue. What I didn't realize is you have to join first and then audition. But I was confident that I was going to make it. What I didn't know is most people, you have your base competition first, and then you'll have like a regional competition, then they do a worldwide competition. So most people don't make it through even to the worldwide competition for a year or two. And then almost nobody who makes it through to the worldwide competition makes it their first year. Well, my first year that I auditioned, I made it all the way through the worldwide competition and made it onto the team.
Wow.
And so that was kind of surprising. I got onto the team and went on a worldwide tour. We went to something like 130 countries in 1 year. So we went to military bases where we would just do a show. We would set up, do a show, tear down, get on the bus, go to the next base, set up, do a show. And it was back to back to back for a year. And that was pretty intense. And so after doing that, I went back to the regular military and got stationed in Korea. So I had a whole year, a whole life living in Korea. And then they invited me to come back, and even a smaller group, like the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, ever gets called back to do another tour on Tops in Blue. And so they actually pulled me from Korea. They had to go to the Pentagon and get a 4-star general to approve it to invite me to come back to go on the tour again.
Wow.
And so that was really a nice achievement, and it really meant, it kind of underscored to me that you can work really hard at something and achieve it. Even if you don't have like a natural skill, a natural talent, a natural ability that just comes to you without any kind of work or any kind of, like I said, natural ability, or, a lot of people think they have to have some sort of natural talent. I didn't have it. I didn't turn on the air conditioning in my house. And it jumped up in heat today. So from being there in the military, I got out and I went to Las Vegas, and I became one of those centurions at the Caesar's Palace, and I became one of the Venetian gondoliers. And from that time being a Venetian gondolier, I met the guy who was in charge of that program, and he said, I used to work on cruise ships. I used to be the musical director on cruise ships. So I went and auditioned. I just drove out to LA one afternoon from Las Vegas, auditioned for a gentleman named Martin Hall, And he said, well, you're just great. I think you'd be perfect, but I don't have any jobs for you for at least the next 6 to 8 months. So I said, okay, I guess I'll go back to Las Vegas and keep driving a gondola. Well, that was on a Thursday. He called me on Monday and said, can you be here by Friday, and you're going to be gone for 6 months. I had just bought a house. It was actually a duplex, so I had a renter and I had a roommate, and I had to wrap everything up in a week, go to rehearse for, I think, 3 weeks, and then I was going on a ship for 6 months. And that led to a very, very exciting career. I got to perform in front of like 2,000 people about 4 or 5 times a week. And I absolutely loved it. It was a great time. It was 5 years of being out on the sea. I did 10 contracts. I worked for Princess Cruises, Celebrity Cruises, Royal Caribbean. And so I got to be in the Caribbean. I got to be in the Mediterranean, all through South America, Alaska. It was just a blast. And I got done doing that, and I had sort of grown tired of being like the starving artist. You know, you love your career, you're having a blast, it's a great time, you meet a lot of fun people, you have a lot of fun times on stage, but you never really have any money. Mm-hmm. And I had gotten used to it. I was like, you know what, I don't need money, I'm happy with my career, and that had sort of run its course. And I said to myself, you know, I didn't have any skills, I didn't have any natural talent as a singer, and look how far I've made it. And why don't I just do that in business? And I thought, you know, if other people can learn how to do stuff in business and figure it out, I can figure it out. So I jumped off into the world of business. I had met a woman, and we wound up getting married later on, but she lived in Hawaii. And so I got off the cruise ship, flew to Hawaii, and decided to open a business. I had no idea what business I was going to start. I had like 5 ideas. I was going to do like a scooter rental, or all different kinds of ideas, like a beach rental, you know, stuff. All the stuff that I had seen as I was on the cruise ship. You know, I'm on the cruise ship and we're at beaches all the time, and I'm saying, well, look at this guy. He's got, you know, he's wearing seashells, he's hanging out on the beach, and he's renting out, you know, little surfboards or whatever, or beach chairs. And I thought, I'll just do something like that. Well, one of the things that was big at the time was internet cafes. You know, everybody just didn't have the internet right there on their phone. And so I decided I'm going to open an internet cafe. I didn't even know how to rent a building. I didn't know how to rent a space. I didn't know how to hook up computers. I didn't know anything. But somehow I got a deal. I bought 20 computers. I put them in and plugged them in. It took me like 3 days to get them to all work. And we got them all going. And sure enough, it hit. It started making money. Did pretty well for about a year. And then the cruise ships changed their schedule. Mm-hmm. So most of the people that were on the cruise ship, you know, you'd get off and you go check your emails and everything, because you don't have that on the ship. And sure enough, they changed their schedule, so all my customers went away. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the big first lessons I learned is, you know, if you build your industry on something that's dependent on something else, for example, if you build it on the oil field and the oil field goes bust, your business goes bust. If you build it on the cruise ship schedule, cruise ships change their schedule, your business goes bust. So that was one of the big lessons that I learned right off the bat. So after Hawaii, that was sort of going poorly. I got just a regular job, like waiting tables, and that was actually going fine. And my brother calls up, and I'd been trying to get into real estate. I realized that real estate was, and I didn't even really know what real estate was. I didn't know, do I become an agent, or, you know, how do I be an investor? How do I find these properties? I didn't know anything. And he says, you know, I've met this guy, and we're out here in Los Angeles, and we're doing this thing, and we're going to start up a new venture over there in Las Vegas. So why don't you come out to Las Vegas and let's figure this out together, and let's go do it. And just like I said, I jump in with both feet and figure out, okay, I guess I'll learn how to swim. You know, they say an entrepreneur is somebody who jumps out of an airplane with a backpack full of silkworms and believes in their ability to get it done by the time they hit the ground. And that's what I did. I just jumped into it, and we actually were doing, we called it real estate, but what we were doing is buying hotel rooms a year before a convention would come to town. And this will skip to the end of the story later on also. I realized that dynamic pricing was important. You know, whenever you buy a hotel room or you book a plane reservation a year in advance, you're going to get a much lower price than if you book it, 2 weeks before the flight. Same thing for us. We would buy the hotel rooms, like 20 or 30 of them, a year in advance. And then we just start calling everybody that was going to the convention. There'd be like 30,000 people going to the convention. So that means, 3, 4, 5,000 companies. We'd call them all up and say, hey, Mr. Company, we're calling for your trade show coordinator. They'd put us through to the person. We'd say, you know what, we're running out of hotel rooms. We have these 3 choices, which is, of course, were the 3 choices we had booked already. We'd book them up. We'd take a deposit. And so we started like doing this float, this monetary float, where we would have this deposit to where we didn't even have to pay out for the rest of the rooms for 6, 8, 12 months. And it was incredibly successful. We went from 4 of us in a home office to about 30 operators making 200 to 300 calls a day within the first 6 months. And in that 6 months, we did 4.7 million. And so it was exciting, and it was successful, and it was fun. And like I said, this is my second time to Las Vegas. So I became the guy who was going out and securing the contracts. I'm out there schmoozing, wearing these nice, beautiful suits every day, talking to the hotel managers, like securing these larger contracts. And I tell you what, that was probably one of my biggest growth spurts in business. Just being thrown into the fire of high stakes negotiations for, a $60,000 contract. Like, I'm going to go meet with this guy for 30 minutes and get a $60,000 contract, and we're going to turn around and we're going to turn it into a $300,000 profit. And so that was pretty exciting. And we did that for about 4 years. Then 2008 happened, and everything in the convention and the travel world just stopped. And we were heavily invested in, we would take the money we were making from that and we would buy houses in Atlanta. That was a huge thing happening at the time, that Atlanta was very undervalued, and you could pick up these properties, flip them pretty quickly, nice profit, and everything just stopped. I remember Bear Stearns closed, and then we were a little bit worried, we were concerned, we were like, but we're going to be okay. Everything's just fine. And then I remember the day that Lehman's closed. And we were like, everything's not going to be fine. And as a matter of fact, that same morning, I think it was September 15th, I was going to be getting my personal first big investor. Because we were just using money from our business to invest in these properties. But I had been out networking. I had met people. I had brought someone in, I'd explained to him what we do, and I said, it was going to be a $30,000 check in my pocket, which was a big deal as part of this larger investment. And so he came in, it was, I'd worked this contact for a while, we'd gotten to know each other, became know, like, and trust, all the things. And he comes in that morning, and instead of giving me a $30,000 check, he sat there and cried on my beautiful Italian leather sofa all morning because he had all his money in Lehman. And it had just closed that morning. All of his money gone. And this was a regular working guy. He owned a trucking company. He bought a truck. He bought another truck. Before you knew it, he had a fleet. He brown bagged it to work every day, saved up every penny, and had it all in Lehman. He wasn't a financial, expert, not a financial type of guy. And I realized, it could all just switch in a second, and it did. And 2 weeks later, my divorce fell apart, or my marriage fell apart. We wound up getting divorced later. But I went from there, and I went out into San Diego. That's where her family lived. We lived with her family, and worked out there for many years. Then just had a terrible run of bad luck with starting up new businesses. Just back to back to back. 3 of them just fell apart. And I wound up living in a van. I'm divorced now, trying to work. I'm living in a van, and things were not going that great. And even at that same time, whenever I'm living in a van, cooking my meals outside over an open fire a lot of times, like really not doing very well at all, I still had a cell phone, and I still was calling real estate investors trying to make deals. And here I am in a van trying to make something happen. Well, sure enough, something happened. I wound up in this van, and I was back in Hawaii. I had, we had a son. I wanted to go be close to my son, so I moved out there, working once again as a waiter, trying to save my money by living in this van. And sure enough, something popped up. This old guy comes to me, and he says, well, I've got these terrible pieces of land, but I'll sell them to you really cheap. And I said, well, what do you mean really cheap? And he said, I'll give you the worst possible one. It's completely full of trash. It's got like 5 abandoned cars on it, and then 5 more cars worth of parts scattered around. Brakes, wheels, doors, hoods, engines, just scattered around a whole entire acre. Refrigerators, couches, like a dump ground. But he goes, but it's only $200 down, $200 per month. And I'm like, well, I can do that. $200 down, $200 per month. And I remember the day. I remember the day I gave him the cash, and he said, okay, I want you to look around. Look at everything that you see. This is all yours now. It was just nothing but trash. And it was all mine. And so I started cleaning the place up, and it was 6 months straight of 1 to 2 trips to the dump every single day with a full truckload of junk. All kinds of trash. There had been drug addicts that had lived there, hoarders, other people that just used it as a dump ground. And it took forever. But I just stuck with it. And in the meantime, old Bob, he comes to me and he says, the guy next to you, I own that next piece of land too. I'll sell you that one. It's better than yours for $400 down, $400 per month. I said, okay, I'll take it. I give him the money. The next week, I sold it to the next guy for $800 down, $800 per month. And he was thrilled because that was a great deal for him. So I realized, wait a minute. If I can do this with one property, how many properties does he have? And he had about 40. And so I started doing that. I started buying these properties from him and turning around and selling them. And so it was basically, I was doing this rental, owner finance arbitrage, where I'm owner financing it and then I'm basically assigning the contract to somebody else. And at the beginning it was sloppy, and it was handwritten contracts, the best I could do. And each property that I did, it got better. I started getting better contracts. made a little money, so I got in touch with an attorney and helped write out a good contract. And of course, the attorneys will teach you, they'll sell you their time, but they're selling you their knowledge. And so he taught me how to really do it right. I learned how to record the contracts on my own, how to record deeds, how to write deeds, how to make a contract for deed. And all that went really well for many years. I remember when I first started off, I was like, because you remember I'm living on this piece of land. I had just parked the van on there, and I lived in the van while I cleaned the property. And then from there I built a tent, and from there I built a house. So it's completely off-grid. No power, no water, no sewer. But it's Hawaii, so it doesn't get cold, doesn't get too hot. It's just nice enough that it's like 75 in the shade every single day. And so I built my own house, which is technically, if you would probably call it like a shed in your backyard. Kind of a tiny house, little 400 square foot little place. But I dug my own sewer, learned how to catch water, learned how to do solar, so we had some power at some times. And I thought to myself during that time, I was like, I've got my expenses down. This had become a big challenge for me. I was like, if I can get my expenses down, because I had such a grand lifestyle in Las Vegas. I had expanded my expenses, how much I spent every month, my lifestyle. I'd expanded it so much, and after 2008, I was like, what if I just get all of my expenses down as low as possible? So I'd gotten my actual living expenses down to $300 per month. And that was really just propane, food, and gas for the truck. And it was a big turning point when I realized you can make less money, but you'll make more money if you spend less money. And I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And I thought to myself at that time, if I have 10 of these properties, man, that would be just amazing. I would just be like fixed for the whole rest of my life if I had 10 of these properties like this. And within about a year and a half, I had about 100 of them. And I think to myself all the time, what if I'd have set my goal at 100? Would I have had 1,000? And so that really started to, that played in later to I always set these humongous, crazy high goals. And you'd be surprised how often I exceed them. And not only me, but anyone. I encourage this to everybody. What I say is, double it and add a zero. Whatever your goal is, whatever big, huge goal that you have in life, double it and add a zero and shoot for that. And even if you don't hit it, you'll probably get much further than the amount that you set in the first place. Because your vision is so much further and your goal is so much larger. And I think there's a book, I don't remember the author all of a sudden, but it's 10x is better than 2x. Because you'll set these larger goals and you're going to get quite a bit further than if you set the smaller goals. But over there in Hawaii, I realized, and it kind of harkened back to my days in the trailer park, whenever I realized, I'm selling these pieces of land. People are building little tiny houses. They're living in vans on the land. They're living in tents on the land. It's a totally off-grid community. And so I realized, I said, wait a minute. This is like the trailer park. I own the land. They pay me every month. They don't own the land. I own the land. But I'm not responsible for what's above the land. The house, the van, whatever they're living in. That's completely their responsibility. And so right around that time, there's a gentleman, Brandon Turner. And he had the Bigger Pockets podcast. And of course, I'm online all the time. I'm learning. I'm trying to understand real estate better, learn better tricks and tips and ways to do things. And he gets involved in mobile home parks. And I said, well, wait a minute. I'm running a mobile home park. And then I thought about it even more and more and more. And at this time I think I had about 60. I had up to 100 at one point. But I had about 60 of these lots. They're 1 acre lots. And I said, I'm running an RV park. So I started to try to make it more like an RV park. So I got in some technology. And I started to make it to where people could look online to see the properties. They could apply online to get the properties. They could sign online. And they could pay online. And so it took me about almost 2 years to put all that together. The website, the payment system, the booking system, the contracts, all of that. It took me about 1.5 years, but I got it all put back together. And I still have around 50 of those properties running now. I live in Dallas, Texas. These properties are all in Hawaii. So this idea of being able to take something that's like what you might call low rent. Like, think about it. There's no power, no water, no sewer. It's just a raw piece of land. And giving people like the Ritz style, like the Ritz-Carlton style of experience, I started to realize that that's where it's at. You know, nobody's looking at these smaller markets, these like low-end houses, low-end, you know, what you might call lower end or niche markets. They'll get into these niche markets and not give high quality service. Like, sort of the point of a mobile home park is, well, you know, it's a mobile home park. You don't got to give them that much good quality, you know. They're not paying that much, so you don't got to give them that much. And I flipped it on its head and thought of it a different way. And thought they're used to getting low quality service. So why don't I take it and give them the highest possible quality service? So now I've got it to where they can pay online. It used to be, you know, they would have to make an appointment, go see somebody, go somewhere and sign a contract, go find a notary, which it was on Big Island of Hawaii, so that's not as easy to go find a notary. It's kind of a country type island, very agricultural. So even to get a notary was a big, huge problem. Then to get the contract back, then to either mail in the check or drive to the bank and put it into the bank. All of these were really hard for the customer. So I started to take away all that friction. You know, friction slows down deals. And so I'd start to take away all this friction. They could just pop open the website, choose one of the properties they wanted to go to, apply for it right there online, get a contract right there, DocuSign, where they didn't have to go find a notary, and then just make a payment with their debit card. They didn't have to go get a check. They didn't have to go down to the, get a, what do they call those? What do they call those things? Money
orders?
Money order, that's right. They didn't have to go get a money order, which was a big challenge. They didn't have to drive down to the bank. And so these started selling like hotcakes. And it became way easier for me because I didn't have to be the one driving around picking up cash at, 8 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. And so I took all of that knowledge and I had kind of reached the largest amount that I could. I couldn't buy like 10 or 20 or 50 units at one time. And I'd been running it like an RV park. And I said, I'm going back to Texas and I'm going to go buy RV parks. Because then I could buy 50 to 100 at a time. It's basically the same as buying like 50 units. Like 50 acres in Hawaii, I could buy 50 of them at a time. And that's what I did. I got over here and got started buying RV parks. At first we were looking at building them. And then I sort of came up with my own kind of special sauce, which RV parks to buy and which ones yield the really huge returns. And I've been talking for quite a while. So how about I pause and see if there are kind of any questions or comments that we can lead the discussion down.
Enlightened investors, if you haven't done so already, be sure and click that like button and also click that share so others can take advantage of the content. And finally, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single one of our upcoming episodes. Well, thank you, Alex, for sharing your story. It's a very touching story, at the same time, very inspiring story, watching a little boy with no natural talent in music and singing, and with what Dr. Angela Duckworth calls grit, stayed with it and really proved that point, that talent can get you only so far, but tenacity and grit is really what anyone who is at the top of their game, they have surpassed talent, and they have really implemented their tenacity. And you certainly have illustrated that for us through your story there, which is extraordinarily powerful. I mean, we can preach at people all day long and tell them, you need to develop tenacity, you need to develop your grit, you need to change your mindset. But an actual story, an actual example of how that is done becomes extraordinarily powerful. And so I really appreciate you taking us through your story, through your ups and downs, through the mishaps you've made, but with, it's just pure grit. You have come through each and every one of those. You've been at the very top, at the very pinnacle. You've been down at the very bottom, and you've come back many, many times in your life. Really, really inspirational. I didn't realize that we had that West Texas experience together. I did my undergraduate work at Lubbock Christian University, and I was in chorus all through my school years as well. And while at Lubbock Christian, there was this one of the churches in Midland, Texas, sponsored this kind of a choral festival, and so Lubbock Christian choruses and the Abilene Christian choruses all met in Midland, Texas, and we sang as individual choruses, and then we sang as a group. So there was this huge group of choruses singing together in this church building there in Midland, Texas, of all places in the world. So
it's altogether possible. I was there.
Yeah, yeah. So I didn't realize we had all of that in common.
That's really amazing.
Well,
I mean, because we've had some other offline conversations that huge parts of our story are very similar.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it?
Isn't it? And emotional growth and such.
Yeah.
While we're talking about that, you kept mentioning the word tenacity. I'm going to get up for 1 second. I want to show you something.
Okay.
This is a book that I had leather bound. It's by an author named Robert Greene, and it's the 48 Laws of Power. And I have 3 of his books that I've gotten leather bound. And I don't know if it'll show at the bottom, but I had it personalized. It says Alex Alexander, and it has my core values: tenacity, integrity, persistence, and service. And over the last 2 years, I've realized that what got me from there to here is not going to get me from here to there. And I rewrote my core values. Whenever I really got into what I'm doing now, syndicating these deals, buying larger RV parks, I realized that tenacity wasn't the only way to do it. And the persistence and the push through and the it was very much from my military background. It's very much push through and get it done no matter what. But that's also like being a bulldozer. You're gonna push through, but you're really gonna push people out of the way. You're gonna run people over. You're gonna cause damage because you're just a bulldozer, just pushing through. And so I completely changed it. I changed my entire core value system from tenacity, integrity, persistence, and service to kindness, courtesy, communication, and community. And that's really what I've started to build, is a community. And I started my mastermind to where I started teaching other people how to go out and find RV parks, and created this community. And one of the things I've been talking to them about recently is, if you're going to set up your core values, you have one that's kind of like your ethereal, your like mental kind of part, and you have your action part that leads to the ethereal part. Like courtesy, like kindness is kind of like a personality trait or a mental state, so to speak. But there has to be some sort of action that leads to that. And to me, that's the courtesy part. So I was like, if I can just be more courteous, every single email I try to put please and thank you in it. And a lot of times I'll be done with my email and I'll look back, oh, I forgot to put please at the beginning. I forgot to put thank you at this part. And so taking the action of courtesy, I feel like has helped lead me to a mentality of kindness. Anyway, I just wanted to share that because you kept talking about tenacity, and I was like, that's funny you bring up that word. That was a major part of my life and a major part of my core values. And I encourage anybody. I think everybody should have their core values written down. I actually have them in my Google Calendar so that I see them every single day.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up, and it just is clear to me that our life is a life of development, and as long as we're living, we can continue to grow and we can continue to develop. And that's a major transformation from core values of tenacity to core values of kindness and courtesy and communication and community. I don't think you could have gotten to the kindness, courtesy, communication, and community without the tenacity. It's all been a part of your life and that life experience. But what a transformation, and what a place to be. And I would love to continue our conversation, but we are out of time, and I have another interview coming up here, so we are going to have to bring this to an end here. Well, enlightened investors, I know you have enjoyed our conversation today with Alex Alexander, and you can find Alex at alexalexander.info, and that is alexalexander.info. And just in a brief moment here, just to tie things up here and tell us about your company now and how we can get in touch with you other than alexalexander.info.
Sure. Pretty much if you search Alex Alexander RV, you're going to find me all over the place on social media. Got a bunch of Facebook, TikTok. I got all that. I got a guy I work with. I've been making videos for, 5 years now about this. And you can go back and hear me talking about RV parks for the past 5 years. Pretty much been saying the same thing over and over and over. But you can find me there. I've also got ParadiseParkVentures.net. We have 3 open investments going right now. One of them's in Ranger, Texas. One of them's in Moyers, Oklahoma. One of them's right outside of Boston. And then as part of my mastermind, where I teach people how to I say that there's 3 parts of a deal. There's the deal getter, the money getter, and the administrator. And so I've focused in and gotten really good at the administration, kind of the quarterbacking of the entire deal. I teach people how to go be the deal getter. And then once they learn how to get the deal, I kind of graduate them into being the money getter. And that all goes on personality. You know, the administrator has to be a guy like me that's like on banker's hours, in an office, sitting at a desk. The money getter needs to be the person who's going to golf tournaments and charity events and yacht parties and hanging out at those kind of places. And so I try to quarterback, and the quarterback, has to understand talents, abilities, natural sort of personality. And that's what I do. I've got a mastermind called The Boss Method. You can find that at thebossmethod.net. I got quite a bit of these websites. All of them go back to alexalexander.info. But the community that started to happen from putting together this mastermind has really touched my life and helped me to grow, because I tell them, look, this is your mastermind. I'm the facilitator. I'm not a guru. I'm not a leader. I just might be this much further, ahead of you. I might have just learned this much earlier than you. But I'm no different. I'm not any kind of special person that just has this natural ability to do things. You can do this exactly like I did. So I'll just tell you how I did it. And you can copy the playbook. Please copy my playbook. Please. That's all I did. All I did was see what other people are doing. Aaron Holtgren, amazing mentor of mine who became a partner. I just, everything that he says, I just do it. I don't understand it a lot of times, I just do it. Same thing, Brent Mott, another guy. Didn't understand a lot of the stuff he talks about. I just follow his example and just do it. These are very, very successful real estate investors. And they taught me about syndicating, putting together a group of individuals, putting all the money together, and taking down these big assets. It's been quite an adventure.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for being with us. And enlightened investors, I know you have enjoyed our show today. And if you did, please take a moment to subscribe and also go to Apple Podcast and leave us a rating and a review. Until next time, live abundantly, and we will see you in the next episode.
Thank you, Alan.
Enlightened investors, wait, don't go just yet. I just want to remind you about our recently launched webinar that you will not want to miss. If you're at all curious and would like to learn more about how real estate investing can diversify your investment portfolio, alleviate the anxiety associated with Wall Street swings, leverage your 401ks and IRAs to substantially increase the return on your investment, and do all of this with turnkey, hands-off, passive real estate investments, then you'll want to immediately go to stevetalker.com/webinar. In the webinar, we'll also address the common dubious investment schemes that you want to avoid. To access the webinar, go to stevetalker.com/webinar. I look forward to seeing you in the webinar.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Estate Investing Abundance, brought to you by Steve Talker Capital, a company working for passionate professionals like you to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steve Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steve Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures, great and small, flourish abundantly. For resources to develop your financial independence, connect with us at stevetalker.com.